All right, today we're going to dive into something huge, Nepal's 2072 Constitution. And listen, this is so much more than just some dry legal document. It's really a story of struggle, revolution, and an entire nation trying to figure out who it wants to be.
You know, people often say a constitution is the soul of a nation. And it's a great way to think about it, right? It's like the fundamental promise a country makes to its people, the roadmap for where they're all going together.
So that begs the question, what does it actually take for a nation to find its soul? Well, for Nepal, let me tell you, it wasn't easy. It was a long, hard journey, full of hope, yeah, but also a lot of setbacks. Okay, so to get why 2072 was such a big deal, we got to go back in time. We have to look at the long road it took to get there.
Wow, yeah, this timeline, it really shows you just how long this fight was. I mean, look at this. The first pushes for democracy started way back in 2007 BS. That's the Nepali calendar, by the way. Then you get a constitution in 2047, which was a step, but it just wasn't enough. Fast forward to 2062/63, and you have this massive people's movement demanding a totally new, inclusive future. So they form an assembly in 2065 to write a new constitution, and it fails. It collapses. Can you imagine? It took a second try, another 7 years, before they finally got it done.
And that finally brings us to the breakthrough. The moment this new document, what's really known as the People's Constitution, was born.
So, what made it the People's Constitution? This is the absolute key. This wasn't some document written behind closed doors by a king or a bunch of elites. No way. For the very first time in Nepal's history, the Constitution was written by representatives who were directly elected by the people. Their whole job, the reason they were elected, was to create this document.
And here's the day it all happened. Asojka 3rd, 2072 BS. For those of us using the Gregorian calendar, that's September 20th, 2015, the day the Constitution was officially promulgated, and a new chapter for Nepal truly began.
Okay, so it's here. But what's actually in this new blueprint for the country? Let's take a look inside and break down the big ideas.
All right, first up, a huge change to how the country is run: federalism. Think of it like this. Instead of all the power being stuck in the capital city, Kathmandu, they broke it up. Power was now shared between the central government, new provincial governments, and local ones. The whole country was redrawn into 7 provinces, and the goal was simple: bring the government closer to the people wherever they lived.
And at the heart of it all are these core principles. Each one tells a story about Nepal's past and its hopes for the future. Sovereignty, that means the ultimate power is now with the Nepali people, not a king. Inclusivity and social justice, these were put right at the front, guaranteeing rights for groups that have been marginalized for so long. Then you have fundamental rights, things like education, health, a free press. And finally, 2 massive changes: establishing Nepal as a secular republic. This officially ended its long history as a Hindu kingdom.
So, how do you make all this work and keep it stable? Well, you do it with a classic separation of powers. You've got your 3 branches. The executive, that's your prime minister and their cabinet. They run the show and implement the laws. The legislative, a parliament with 2 houses. Their job is to make the laws. And the judiciary, the court system, is there to interpret the laws and make sure justice is served. It's all about checks and balances, so no single group gets too powerful.
But, it's not just about grand ideas. The people who wrote this constitution were trying to solve some very real, very practical problems. One of the biggest headaches in Nepal's political past was constant instability. You'd get these huge, bloated government cabinets basically formed to keep a bunch of different political parties happy in a coalition.
So what was the Constitution's solution? It was so simple, it's brilliant. A number. Just 25. That's it. The federal cabinet cannot have more than 25 ministers. A hard cap. It was a direct shot at making governments leaner, more stable, and hopefully a lot more effective. And believe me, this thing is comprehensive. We're not talking about a little pamphlet here. This is a deeply detailed blueprint for the whole country. To give you an idea of just how detailed, check out these numbers. It's broken down into 35 major parts.
And within those parts, you've got 308 articles. These are the specific rules and clauses.
And holding it all together are 9 schedules, which are basically the appendices that spell out all the details, like what the national flag looks like or exactly which powers the provinces have.
But, and this is a big but, a constitution is just words on paper, right? It's the beginning of the story, not the end. The promise is one thing, but turning that promise into reality, that's a whole different challenge.
And Nepal has definitely faced challenges. I mean, actually putting that complex federal system into practice is a huge job. Political instability is still a real issue. And it's important to remember not everyone was celebrating. There was significant dissatisfaction from groups like the Madesi community in the south, who felt the new provincial boundaries actually hurt their political representation. And that led to major protests. So yeah, the biggest challenge of all is making this thing a living document, something that people actually feel the effects of in their daily lives.
And that really brings us full circle, back to that idea of the soul of a nation. Because the Constitution isn't just some abstract thing for lawyers to argue about. It's deeply, deeply personal. It's tied to our lives, our identity, and the future we're all trying to build.
Which all leads to this one final powerful idea: shared responsibility. A piece of paper can't build a nation. People do. So I'll leave you with this question to think about. A constitution provides the roadmap, the blueprint. But who's actually responsible for the journey? In Nepal's case, making the promise of 2072 real isn't just a job for politicians. It's a question that every single citizen has to answer, day in and day out.